Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance. This is the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We have a very special guest today. We have Chad Cooper. He's an extraordinary life coach with many talents. He formerly worked at Microsoft and for Tony Robbins. He's also a successful businessman and philanthropist, and he's going to tell us all about his story today and his many accomplishments. So let's give a warm welcome to Chad Cooper. Welcome, Chad. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Okay. So, Chad, let's get started with a quick summary, because you're a very extraordinary person. You actually have so many things to talk about. I'll let you put it in your words. Let's first start with like a description of yourself in like less than one paragraph, and then we'll get into an extended version of your story. Okay.
You got it. I will do my best to be concise, and in order to do that, I would say it began at the ripe young age of 19, going into the Marine Corps and understanding finance from day one, and choosing from high school to college and all the way through to retirement at age 35. Save first, spend what's left, and that is a very contradictory statement to the average American average person, right? And so through that allowed me to be able to actually be in control of my future, be in control of my time, be in control of my financial future. And that's really kind of directed and allowed me to buy and sell companies, create my own companies, and then come in and run companies that are multi-billion-dollar industries. So that's a quick synopsis of that, and I use that in my coaching practice with executives, with professional athletes, because it's all about mindset in your relationship around money that really supports your future.
Excellent.
Those two paragraphs.
That's okay. So, but I mean, if you had to rank one of the things of the many things you did as a quick description, would you say first the life coach?
As the many things I've done, actually, I would rank extraordinary husband and father as the number one. I was actually just talking to my wife yesterday, and we're about to be empty nesters here in the near future. And I said, it's time for us to dream about what the next chapter possibilities could be. And we're talking about, this company that I'm looking to sell for multi-billions. And she said, this will be your greatest accomplishment. And I said, no, actually, my family, in retiring at 35 to be there for my son is my greatest accomplishment. I can look at my family and say, if I did nothing else that mattered, that I would be satisfied with.
Wow, that is a great response. Because usually when you hear people talk about their successes, is I was, great at a specific job. I made X amount of dollars, have this degree and that degree, but you went straight for the family, which family first.
Yeah, I go straight for that because that's the foundation, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that as the foundation, then as the Dalai Lama says, is you spend your life accumulating money only to then spend all that money down to gain back your relationships and your health. And so really I changed the conversation. We've talked about that before, is I don't look at it as an either or. I look at it as a yes and. Make sure my family is cared for and make a crap load of money at the same time. And so I did not subscribe to society's belief of choose. I looked at it and said, both, and let's figure out how.
That's great. That's a great answer. Thank you, Chad. So
Yep.
let's get into the story of how you became Chad Cooper. Let's take it back. We'll start chronologically. Childhood. Did you ever think that you would end up in this path of life? And what was your childhood like?
Well, in many ways, I grew up in a small farm town kind of community. High school was surrounded three sides by cornfields, and there was a lot to appreciate about that. Growing up in Michigan, a Midwest state, one of the benefits of doing that is when you're surrounded by agriculture, you learn the philosophy of money, and that is don't get too big for your britches is one of the sayings, right? And that is one harvest could be a boon and another harvest could be a bust. And so they really have to honor the principle of you have to save because you might have a drought, you might have a crop that's destroyed, and you have to have enough saved to be able to replant and start over. And I would say learning in one of the greatest gifts that I've been blessed with is the ability to observe others and learn from their successes as well as their failures, so that hopefully I don't repeat their failures, but instead find the successes. And so in many ways, I was lucky that way. In others, I had about every trauma that you could probably imagine, from alcoholism to divorced parents to, you name it. And again, changing the conversation on that, Tony, is people would say, "Oh, you poor child, you're the product of divorced parents." And I'm like, I'm not a victim. I got 4 parents to choose the best qualities from. You only get 2. And so really we can take any vehicle and we still have choice on how we want to see that future or that present circumstance. And I just looked at that and said, what's the opportunity in this versus what's the victimization that I could cling to as well?
That's a great response. So let's talk about that. What are some of the major obstacles that you had to overcome in your earlier parts of life?
Well, early on, I was a mama's boy. Proud to say it, and youngest of a very, very large family. And I went into the Marine Corps at age 18, and they were instrumental in teaching me about what's possible. And so I've been very fortunate to have some very strong mentors, and personally, I think everybody should serve in this military, but it's not for everybody. So there's civil engineering, there's civil service things that you could do. The point of that is the same as finances, is it's a responsibility, it's a discipline, and there are shortcuts, there are paths that can give you repeated success. And one of those is learning the difference between the Navy SEALs really say it best, is if uh, somebody is stopped and they're hurt, is they'll ask, "Are you injured or are you hurt?" And there's a huge distinction between the two, because we have to decide. And they allowed me to be able to see I'm capable of far more than I could ever imagine, but I have to be willing to endure some pain. And our finances are no difference, right? Are we willing to forego the immediate convenient gratification in order for something bigger? So do we choose the path of convenience or the path of wisdom? And the thing that I learned early on in that is pain is part of the formula for success. Suffering, however, is optional, and I choose not to suffer. And so learning that early on, it allowed me to be offered a tryout for the U.S. ski team. It allowed me to be a Regimental Marine of the Year. It allowed me to then go into a company that was incredibly difficult to get into, and then retired by the age of 35, and on it goes. So that really was a keystone to pointing me in the right direction.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So yeah, let's talk about the first major financial milestone. So you said that you had a goal of retiring, and 35 years old, you retired from what, Microsoft, as a millionaire?
Yeah, a small little computer company. Most people probably never heard of it. Yeah, so when I was 18, I got these cassette tapes. Okay, so really going back, they weren't 8-track, but they were cassette tapes by this guy named Tony Robbins, and it was personal power. And something like 87% of people who buy self-help courses never finish them. Not only did I finish them, I finished them again and again and again. And so what I looked at age 18 was who did I want to be, and what did I want to do by the age of 40? And often often we go into careers and we decide, what do we want to do? But I was able to really start early and decide, who did I want to be regardless of whatever I'm doing. And so I still use that today when I'm hiring people, is I hire them based on their character, and then secondarily is their skill set. I don't have time to teach character. I can teach skill set quite easily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing that, what it allowed me to do is really map out with absolute clarity what those 20 years would look like. And by being able to say, here's the map, it's kind of like when you decide you want to go on a road trip, is you map it out. Back before GPS existed, you had to figure out, where was I going to refuel? Where was I going to take a bathroom break? Where am I going to get food? Where am I going to rest my head? And so when you know where those milestones are, you can safely navigate. You can look and identify where the construction spots that are going to slow you down, where the congestion, where the roadblocks and accidents, so that you know whether you veered off course or whether you're staying on path. And I would say that was very, very much a part of my success, and I was able to accomplish it 5 years before I had expected it to.
That's great. How did it feel to retire, so to speak, financially?
Great for about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I am a doer, right? So if somebody asked me, hey, Chad, go to the beach, my immediate response is, what are we going to do? Right? I'm not going to just sit there. Now, if you tell me, go get a tan, okay, I can do that. You tell me, go play in the water, okay. I'm a doer, a type A person, and I tried to be a type B personality, and I failed miserably. So I'm a recovering type A personality, right? And so I spent about 3 months in retirement and absolutely went stir crazy. And I was like, if this is retirement, it sucks. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that wants to sit on the couch eating bonbons, drinking beer, watching football, or sitting on the golf course endlessly. I enjoy those things, but not as the next 60 years of my life kind of scenario. And so what I learned was to define for myself, as I have through my life, having the courage to define for myself rather than society's low standards, what does retirement really look like? And when I did that, what I found was, I think we all probably would agree with, retirement is doing what you want on your time frame and on your terms. So it doesn't mean that you're off on the golf course, right? Or sitting on the couch. It means I get to define how much I want to do that, how much I want to be engaged in business. And as a result of that, I have 3 foundations. I have 2 companies currently, and I am busier than I ever was in the corporate world, but it's on my terms.
Mm.
And so it fills me up. I could work 80 hours a week if I wanted to, and I'm still going to get filled up, as opposed to people going in and being in a career that they're settling for. In fact, it's not even a career, really. You know, it's a job, or at best it might be a career, but it's not a passion. And I can work 3 times more and still be filling up, as opposed to they're draining their batteries. And that is just because I looked at it and said, who do I want to be in retirement?
That's a great point. Actually, we were talking about this with Christy Whitman on episode 2. She had told us why she became a life coach and talked us through the story. And she had worked at a big company and then realized, I'm making a lot of money, but I don't really feel happy here. And then she went and took a pay cut and made a decent living, but had to struggle through it. And she was happier though. So, and I agree, Chad. I actually was a retirement specialist at Vanguard when I got out of college. So I talked to a lot of old, wealthier, rich people that needed to move their money over from retirement accounts into IRAs and stuff. And what normally happens is, just like you said, I mean, people get very bored in a very short amount of time. And those that do have type A personalities like yourself and me, they die. They die really fast. And I think it's just because you lose your sense of purpose. So would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. In fact, that's one of the specialties that I offer to my clients. And regardless of whether they're a billionaire, a professional athlete, or somebody that's just average like me, or just getting started out in life, when we look at certain words like dad or mom, that can bring up mixed emotions. For some people, they're fond emotions. For others, they're cringing and something that they would avoid and have a lot of hurt and anger towards, right? So we can look at that in the way that we look at working out as an example as well, or finance. And we attach emotions to our language based on our experiences and positive experiences or tragedy that may happen. And unfortunately, I don't find that our school systems, private or public, really do anywhere close of a sufficient job of preparing a person for financial acumen or financial success. Well, we can look at that as, is that an excuse or an explanation? And if you still see that as an excuse, what you're saying is that you're using that as a crutch. You're using that in becoming a victim for your current and present day decisions or future based. But if we can look at that and say whatever happened in the past is an explanation, then we can take responsibility and accountability and say, yeah, but what am I going to do to move forward and do things differently? And that means that we can go to the library. Last I checked was free, right? We can go on the internets, the interwebs. I love saying that. Or we can pick up an audio. But there's a number of things that we can do to educate ourselves. But ultimately, we have to take that responsibility for ourselves. And when we do that, then we can look at the language of finance and say, is there any emotional charge to this? Most of us are filling our calendars with to-dos, with limp language. And so instead of saying, saving or finance time, instead what we need to do is find the strength of the purpose itself. To your point of is purpose important? Yeah, it's everything. Because it's not your strength that holds you to your purpose. Another way of saying that is it's not discipline that's going to get you across a finish line of a marathon or an Ironman. It's the strength of the purpose itself. So let me give you an example. If you saw a little toddler, throw a ball and it goes out into rush hour traffic and your kid starts running after that ball, do you have to come up with any juicy and delicious language to know what exactly you need to do? You're going to go immediately and take action on that. Why? Because you're very clear on your purpose, to save a life. But when it comes to our finances, do we put that same level of understanding and purpose behind it? Or do we just use, like saving for my future? Well, that's not going to win compared to buying a new smartphone that's cool and has a better camera and a minimal better processor. Why? Because that's not what they're selling. They're selling emotion, not features, right? So we have to understand that we buy on emotion and support it with logic. So you have to look at your calendar and ask, when you're putting down time for your finances, is it smart? Is it socially appropriate language? Or is it emotionally driven? That's our purpose. So I know I'm going on here, but it's a really important concept because we're brainwashed to believe that our purpose is a thing, right? It's a title, it's a career, it's how much money you have in the bank, it's whether you live in the right neighborhood or what the badge emblem is on your car. And that's a bunch of hogwash. Your purpose is how you want to feel consistently day to day. Do you want to feel gratitude? Do you want to feel kindness? Do you want to feel successful? Do you want to feel joyful? Well, money can support enabling those things. But if we say, well, I have to have X amount of money in the bank, we've seen the scenario of people who've risen to the top, celebrities, had all the money, had all the fame in the world, only to off themselves. Why? Because they realized that wasn't the solution. Your emotions are what we have to focus on. And that's how we drive financial success.
That's beautiful, Chad. And I want to just comment real quick on my last book, The Survival of the Richest. I listed a whole bunch of a list of the most important essentials, survival essentials that people need in life, and I characterized them as mental versus physical. And the one of the conclusions that really resonated deep with me after that book, and there was a lot of conclusions in there, but one was that purpose actually ranks higher than everything. I mean, everything. I mean, everything I wrote in that book, purpose came to the top, and I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out the realities of it. And I just want to get your thoughts on this. You know what the number two was? Number two was the will to live. And I rationalized it as this: you need a purpose, right? Everyone has a purpose, but the will itself is a desire, right? But if you desire something, you still need a purpose for why are you desiring it. You know, it all comes back to the purpose itself. So what's your thoughts on where does the will to live stand in this whole aspect of purpose for living? Is that important as well?
Well, we can live in survival. We can live in poverty and have to ask ourselves, are we really living? Right? Even a dead fish can float downstream. To really live means that we're willing to be like a salmon in fight against the current. If you look at a sailboat as an example, it can't do anything without harnessing the resistance of the wind. And so this goes back to understanding that in order to accomplish anything worth a darn, pain's probably going to be part of the equation, right? So
Absolutely.
when we look at will to live, another way of saying that is purpose. What's your purpose? Another way of saying that is, do you have a compelling motive? And if we look at motive, there are 7 primary motives. One of them is the will to live, right? Another one is the will of the freedom of expression and voice. But out of those 6, one of them has 6 moving away from, or 6 fear motives. So we have 5 moving towards motives, the desire for fame and freedom of voice, right? But more compelling are the motives of fear, fear of death, fear of poverty, fear of criticism and judgment. And we need to understand which one is a more compelling motive. So when I work with clients in the professional athletes or Olympians in upcoming games as an example, I'll give you an example of one is a multi-world champion boxer, and he's in the Hall of Fame currently, and he's going up for one of his repeat titles to preserve the title. And he's struggling. He's like, yeah, I got this. And I said, well, let me ask you, who do you think is more motivated? The guy who's trying to take the title away from you and win his first championship belt, or you trying to retain it? It's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you're going to work hard. You're going to be willing to endure some pain. But at what round will you say, enough? Well, none. I said, really? Oh, yeah, man, I'm committed to this. I said, okay. Well, I hope you are, because, and this was a hypothetical, I did not really do this disclaimer, right? I said, really? Because I kidnapped your children this morning, and I've just put $2 million on you beating this guy. And if you don't win, you're never going to see your kids again. Now, did I just give him a compelling motive? Yeah. Because, see, the desire to make more money is not nearly as powerful as preservation of his children's lives. And so we need to understand motive can be a moving towards, or it can be a moving away from preservation of life. And a motive of fear is often far more compelling. So when we look at things like save for my retirement, wow, that sounds really painful and really far away. So let's be honest. We have to be willing to get away from the collegiate language and the socially appropriate language and literally put on your calendar time for FU money, right? I mean, how many of us would love to have FU money? Like, I don't care. I've got so much money. I don't have to be appropriate. I don't have to go work for anybody. I can do whatever I want because I've got so much money. FU. That's a compelling motive. And that's about emotion. So if we really want to achieve our emotional goals, or I'm sorry, we want to achieve our financial goals, we better make them emotionally compelling. That's where the motive comes from. It's not coming from your brain. It's not coming from collegiate college intellect. It's coming from emotional commitment and clarity.
And Chad, I was listening to one of your former interviews, and you had mentioned Viktor Frankl. So we obviously read the same books. Viktor Frankl, I put him in my last one. He said he talks about existential. I can never pronounce that word. Existential frustration, where basically people are frustrated with their existence, and because they're putting the wrong goals as a purpose. For example, they're putting making money or power. But after you made, and there's the scenario I created. Imagine having all the money in the world, all the power in the world. Okay, so what are you going to do next, right? So what are you going to do with that? And if you still feel empty, then there's a problem, right? And that's why a lot of this is connected to this concept. What you're talking about of not making money your priority. Basically, don't make it your purpose. You're going to make something else your purpose. It's because they're going to feel this existential frustration where they're not going to feel like they're really living their purpose while they're on this planet. Money is just a tool to get there, but what is your real purpose? And I think that's an excellent way to look at it. What do you think?
Yeah, so when we're sitting down and we're doing our goal setting and dreaming about our future, we can look at Bobby Kennedy said it well, and he says, some people see things as they are and ask why. Others dream of things that have never been and ask why not. That's all about emotion. And so it's fair to say maybe you're comfortable with saying, I'm going to jot down some material attainment, some things that I want. And don't get me wrong, I'm perfectly comfortable with material attainment, right? It doesn't define me. It might complement me. And having things, I don't have things for people's approval or judgment. I have them because they complement my life. I like nice things and I can afford nice things, but they don't define who I am.
What is your
And so
purpose, Chad? Like, what if you had to define your purpose? What would that be?
my purpose is to help people recognize that they actually have the power and the energy to direct and navigate their own purposeful future. That's my goal. And I know the value of what that is and what I receive financially in exchange for providing that value for people. And so often what we see in that, Tony, are people who are kind of one of two worlds, material attainment to spiritual avoidance, right? Or we see the people that are all spiritually enlightened and shun material attainment.
Yeah,
Well, guess what?
very
It's not
true.
an either or.
Yeah.
Why can't it be a yes and? So
That's such
my
a great
goal
point.
is to help people achieve their purpose and make a crap load of money. Because the more money I make, the more people I can write checks and support. But you can't help the poor by being poor yourself.
Yeah, very, very good point, folks. I hope you're listening to what he just said. You can't. You got to fix yourself before you can help anybody else. You can't help yourself first. You can't help anybody else. It's a sad reality of life. I know you might have a great heart, but if you can't take care of yourself, how in the world are you going to take care of other people? Imagine if you had $1 million, okay, and you just gave it all away. Now you're back at zero and you're working your butt off to climb the hill every day. You did nothing. You might have did a great deed, but going forward, you can't help nobody now. But if you saved a portion of that, maybe 10%, for example, and gave that to charity, and the rest for yourself, and slowly gave some away, you're still in the game and you're continuously helping people. So excellent point, Chad.
Yeah, so that brings up the strategy of if you just take. So I have a program that I invite people in, and there's two requirements of that. One is that you're not a passive participant. It's active participation. In other words, you can't just sit there and suck everything up and just be silent. You have to actually interact. You have to participate, okay? The second is you must contribute. So we were talking about Viktor Frankl, but one of the books that in my all-time favorites is Napoleon Hill, okay? Napoleon Hill said what you hear the term mastermind a lot today, and people have their mastermind groups. But Napoleon Hill is who actually invented the mastermind concept. And what people are missing is that it's not a true mastermind unless, one, you're willing to empty your cup to what you think you know. Come in with an empty cup. Number two is you must be willing to contribute something in return. So if you come into my program and all you're doing is sucking everybody dry, you're not going to be welcome for very long. You must contribute. Each person has gifts, and you need to share those. So you can't have financial abundance if you're doing this and holding on to that money. You must be able to do this because money comes in and then money goes to help others. So I believe you have to be willing to contribute beyond yourself if you truly want abundance, financially, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. So that's why during COVID, people have been freaking out, and people are like, dude, you're like unfazed. I'm like, well, I've been doing this for 30 years, for one. And number two is that I have harmony and balance. This isn't even interrupting me because I'm still contributing and I'm still receiving in ways that you've been completely interrupted. So great, make your list, go see the Grand Canyon, go, visit the Eiffel Tower, create all of those things that you want. You want a Patek Philippe watch that's insanely, awesome, but expensive. Great. But ask yourself, if you want to have an extraordinary marriage, if you want to have extraordinary wealth, how much time when you look on your calendar would you say you're actually putting into that relationship? See, if you want to have an extraordinary marriage, you have to have a relationship with that person. Same with your faith or your religion, but same with your finances. Do you actually have a relationship with your finances? Or are you just checking in on it when it's in emergency mode?
Excellent point. I find it very interesting that no matter what, you can't escape from the great Napoleon Hill. Everybody I bring on this stage somehow throws a comment about Napoleon Hill. Sharon Lecter was the first episode, and she co-wrote the latest book of Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, I think for women. And she said it on Clubhouse. A lot of greats talk about it all the time. A lot of presidents have read that book. So,
it's actually on the desk of about every CEO on the planet. And what people don't know is that there was a book before Think and Grow Rich. As awesome as that is, there's a very relatively little known book that he wrote that was a precursor, and it was How to Own Your Own Mind. And he actually gives you the formula for personal or individual success. And number one on that is you must have the strength of the purpose. You must know what your motive, a compelling motive. So here's Napoleon Hill saying it. And number two is you must be obsessive about achieving it. See, if I see a little kid that's, a child that's about to get hurt, yeah, I'm obsessive about saving that life, right? Can you say the same about your finances, or do you just kind of dabble in it like a hobbyist? Now, being obsessive doesn't mean that it's all consuming. It means that maybe I'm spending 30 minutes a week consuming, checking in, and looking in on it, right? That initial might be a little bit more time to ramp up, but once you have that on cruise control, you don't have to spend a ton of time, but I still have a relationship. And it's about quality rather than quantity.
Thank you, Chad. So we're going to pivot here in a different direction. We had Christy Whitman on here, and I didn't really get into this in depth. What is a life coach? So you're an extraordinary life coach. Listen, life coach to me, it's a new concept, and I apologize, and I'm sure to a lot of the audience as well. I went a different path in life, but it's funny. I just keep bumping into a lot of really good life coaches. So I'm fascinated with this concept. I'm trying to understand myself. Can you elaborate on that for us?
I absolutely can elaborate on it, and I'll actually clarify what it is. I personally believe that it should be licensed. Now, in our country, we tend to only license a profession when we want to raise taxes, okay? There's enough people in it that we go, oh, we can get some tax revenue from this. Speaking of finances, right?
Right.
Some people might argue, but That's my theory.
That's
And
economics.
there's a lot of evidence to support that. So the fact that it's not licensed, we need to be really clear out of the gate that there's a lot of people that go, oh, I have expertise or experience in one field, and therefore I'm going to hang a coaching hat on my door threshold and say I'm a life coach. That is not life coaching. What you are is maybe a mentor, maybe an advisor, maybe a consultant. You could be a number of things. That is not life coaching. So what is a life coach? A life coach is somebody who is certified and actually has a certification, probably from ICF, International Coaching Federation. Okay, they're the regulatory body. It's a worldwide organization.
Mm-hmm.
Second is they don't offer advice, Tony. They listen. And a master coach asks powerful questions because inherently a certified life coach believes that the client already has the answer within themselves. They just need help in the right questions to bring those answers forward so that they can recognize, decide, and act on them. Okay, that's what a master life coach really is about. Rarely do they offer advice, and they might have a ton of experience, and they don't offer that advice.
But
Now,
Chad, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It sounds like a psychologist to me, because I mean, if you go under the Sigmund Freud theory, the guy's sitting on the couch and go ahead, tell me your problems. I mean, isn't that
yeah,
really
how does that make you feel, Tony? So that's what a coach is. Now, how does that differentiate from the world of therapy, we'll say, right?
Right.
So if I'm in a place where I'm the way I am because mom and dad, because of some boo-boo, some trauma, some incident in the past is preventing me from being present in the current moment or making healthy choices for the future, that's a great place for psychology, for counseling, for therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is usually trying to make peace with the past, is that you're using that as an excuse rather than an explanation. Coaching comes in when you can recognize, regardless of what that tragedy is, and each of us has our own degree of tragedy that we could stack and go toe to toe with somebody else, right? So it's not about comparing your tragedy. It's about being able to say, whatever that is that's happened in the past, it's an explanation, no longer an excuse for my current behavior and choices. And I'm in a place where I can be present and responsible for the decisions and actions I take from this point forward. That's a great place for coaching. And you can do both simultaneously.
That's a great answer, Chad. I didn't realize it was that complex, but it's so there is a gray line somewhat between therapy and coaching, right? A little bit.
Absolutely. I have a degree in psychology and religion. I also have, a lot of other certifications and specializations that I do. And so I think that they both lend to each other, and that's where things can get blurred. So I think it's about which one complements the outcome that you're seeking.
Right.
Go do that.
That makes sense. Thank you, Chad.
You bet.
So let's switch gears again. And now this ties into life coach, because you had worked with Tony Robbins. Can you tell us what did you learn when you worked with him? Is that life coaching too, what he does?
He does. He hates being called a motivational speaker or a motivational coach, right? Tony is very much about results coaching, and so there's really kind of varying degrees of coaching. I partnered with Tony for a number of years, and I was his number one coach for quite a while, entrusted with his celebrities and billionaires and professional athletes, etc. And thing that I can appreciate is Tony is a master of assimilating Viktor Frankl, Maslow, all of these different knowledge and concepts and processes, and being able to integrate them. I won't say that he is the inventor of any of them, quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
but he's great at being able to assimilate, to be able to say this is like this and help people move forward in their life in successful ways. But Tony is very much about being a results coach. And
Mhm.
so what I learned from him was what he is the father of is getting people into a concert hall, putting on a rock show on self-help for 14 to 16 hours a day
Wow.
or 7 days a week. And he invented that. I don't know anybody who can come close to holding on to somebody's attention to work on themselves for that long at once. But I learned that he was a great mentor of helping me get clarity and helping really understand that there's a process that you can achieve. And if you know what that formula is, you can you can achieve success in all areas of your life.
Mhm. Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Chad. That's very valuable.
I do want to say one thing about that,
Yeah, go
if I
ahead.
may.
Absolutely.
In coaching, it is my experience that probably 90% or higher coach in three categories, and that is physical, logical, and emotional. But it is my experience and belief if you want to be a master coach, the one area you also need to have in there beyond physical, logical, and emotional is spiritual. And most coaches avoid it like the plague because they don't feel comfortable, they don't have experience, they don't know how to stand in that with their clients. And so when we have somebody that comes and they have marital problems or they're having career goals that they want to attain, whatever, I find that the vast majority of them really need to work in the area of their spirituality in order for these other three areas to flourish as well. So the area that I find really being craved by the vast majority of clients is spiritual because it complements and is overlay to the other three. So if you're looking for one, make sure that they have all four of those components.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah, it seems kind of interesting that somehow spirituality entered this realm, but it's important if you're talking about managing or helping someone with their life. Uh, it's
Or finances.
yeah. Well, yeah, we'll get into that, of course. Um, all right. So you're also an extraordinary philanthropist. Okay. How do you feel when you give someone something? What is that exact feeling that you get, and why does it keep you going?
Well, I think in transparency, it's a selfish act. I do it because it makes me feel good,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
If it didn't make us feel good, how often would we really be doing that? And so I think at the core of it is because it fills me up and it makes me feel good. But beyond that, I also see that there's the golden rule, there's Greek philosophy, all of it says that it is part of the formula for success. And if I can help somebody else with a leg up, then you have karma, right? That goes into that. And so I do it because I like to see the impact that I can create. I like to create transformation, not just short-term motivation or inspiration in people's lives, but literally help transform their lives so that they can change the legacy of their family's future. Be that an inner city, be that a minority, be that any area. I'm indifferent to that if I can help support making a difference in their life. Owning and running in creating a foundation, however, is a pain in the butt. And so when people come to me and say, "Oh, you've created a number of foundations, I want to do that," and my response to them immediately is, "Don't unless you absolutely have to.
Right.
Go attach yourself to one that already exists that complements what you want, and just go serve." And if you find that you have no choice but to start a foundation, then you can, because it's a whole different level of responsibility that is thankless behind the scenes, right? That's all administration and asking for donations and the operations of it. Going out and serving, that's the fun part, right?
Mhm. What can you tell us about your foundations you have? You have something going on in Guatemala right now, and I
I
believe.
do.
Yeah.
We've been in Guatemala for several decades, and specifically, we help the poorest of the poorest, the indigenous Mayan population, and we build houses for widowed women with children. We also teach skill sets, and then we also have a medical outpatient facility to provide the health services that they could otherwise, wouldn't otherwise be able to afford. Now, I personally believe a foundation shouldn't exist long term based on the sole generosity of people's giving. I believe it needs to be self-sustaining. In other words, it has to generate, right? There's a balance. You can't just take, right? So we have to find a way to generate. And so we're in the process. Actually, we do the medical, but that's not really there. So we're building a pizzeria. I have a few houses down from me is a famous Hollywood celebrity that his cousin did some boxing movies, shall we say. We'll leave it at that. And so we're going to open up a pizzeria down there that generates revenue. It'll be called Stallone's. So it's not a hard stretch to.
Oh, I'm from Philly, right? You got Sylvester Stallone. There you go.
So that is one of the things that we're looking to do to help teach that, and then they can go to their villages and replicate it as a bakery or as a pizzeria. And then we're also looking at taking all the recycled plastic, because we build homes. We're going to use those in a Brazilian or a Colombian company, Concepticos Plásticos, I think is what it is. Anyway, they take plastic and then just all the plastic that's all over the world, and there's plenty of it in developing parts of the world sitting all over the place. They compress it and turn it into construction blocks to build houses.
Wow.
So now we get the ability to really impact in multiple ways. And then I work with the oldest indigenous tribe in New Zealand with another foundation. And what we're doing there is bringing the ancient wisdom of indigenous culture to first world countries that we have lost some of those templates of wisdom. And then I'm also helping build wind turbines in one of the companies that I owned does wind turbines, and bringing those to the Maori community and allowing them to participate in revenue generating opportunities and partnering with the government. And then lastly, we do PTSD in the third. And so Hurricane Dorian is an example in the Bahamas. We let Red Cross and UNICEF come in and do the food, water, and shelter. There's plenty of organizations that do it really well. However, there's virtually no one that is handling the PTSD of a child that's holding on to their parent that then gets sucked out into a hurricane to tragically lose them, or vice versa. And so we know that the first way and healthiest way and fastest way to recover from emotional trauma is through music and arts, is the need to emote. And we found healthy ways to do that through music and arts. So we go into these apocalyptic areas, and we bring those resources to communities that are in need. So that means that I get uncomfortable. You learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You learn to do things that, I think, going back to my time in the Marine Corps, I know, hey, there's a warm bed for me waiting. Eventually, this is just a short-term experience, and I'm willing to do that in order to create the impact.
Excellent, Chad. So you work with a lot of celebrities doing life coaching. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of them, I'm sure, already have a lot of money. And this ties into the former conversation. Why is it so important for people to give back, especially people like those celebrities or people that have money already? Why is it so important to give?
I think that you lose perspective. When you live in an environment where you have so much money that it becomes the norm, you lose gratitude, you lose perspective. And so by taking people, for example, into developing parts of the world, it gives you perspective of, holy crap, I am extremely blessed. And so when we don't have the opportunity to do that with somebody who is extremely wealthy, what we can do still is help them understand by giving back. They get emotional fulfillment, as I said, it makes you feel good, right? But they get perspective. They get to recognize how privileged they are. And so when we look at some of these privilege issues that are going on, we need to remember we have American privilege. We have first world privilege.
Yep.
And sometimes we lose appreciation for how blessed we are. And so it allows us to go, oh crap, I need to remember to generate and not just keep sucking or keep taking. But if I give back, what it does is it builds more abundance. And so how do you do that? Whether you're just starting out, it's a mindset, Tony. And so it doesn't matter if you've got $1 billion, $1 million, or $100.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a mindset of I have to give $20 or $10 out of that 100, and that's just your decision that you're going to do, then guess what? Your mind says I don't have to produce 100. I have to make 120 or $110. And so what it does is it changes your mindset from just surviving to I have to create abundance in order to be able to do this. And when you have that mindset of abundance, it goes to Frankl, it goes to Napoleon Hill, it goes to ancient wisdom of there's something there, or they wouldn't keep writing about it. They wouldn't keep sharing about it over centuries.
Chad, in my first book about 10 years ago, the title was called The Necessity of Finance. One of the conclusions, obviously, as the title says, was that finance is necessary for everyone and that learning about it is not an option. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree or disagree? Is finance necessary for everybody? I don't care what occupation you are. I don't care where you live in the world. Would you agree with that?
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Yes, of course I agree with it. Unless you're a socialist or
Yeah.
communist, yes, I would agree with it, right? And
Yeah.
we've seen that those models aren't sustainable long-term either. So yes, it is, we have the right to pursue happiness in our country, but
Mm-hmm.
we have a responsibility to trust people have good intention for us, such as a financial advisor, but never forget it is your responsibility to verify that it is applicable, that it is appropriate, and that you know what the heck they're doing. That is your responsibility to own and direct your finances and not just blindly sit back and let Bernie Madoff, who just passed away, steal it all from you. So yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. And
Okay.
that doesn't mean, oh, well, I came from a school system where my parents, were always in debt. I don't know how to do it. That's an excuse.
Yes.
The explanation is, great, what am I going to do about it? Granted, I didn't get taught this stuff. So what?
Mm-hmm.
You can go to a library. You can go out on the YouTubes. Like how I pluralize all those things.
Well, in Philadelphia, we say the word use for you. So
Use guys.
use
Yeah.
guys. So that's a great point that you made. And it's obviously it's so common sense to us, right? Because we're in that field and stuff. But the average person is struggling. They have no idea how necessary it is. And actually I want to extend this one more. In that first book, the theme of survival kept coming up, and it bothered me. I went through my second book; it still kept coming up, and I started asking myself, is it because of my martial art background? Is it just my bias that survival and money, and what is this connection? And that's how I wrote that 500 plus page book, Survival of the Richest. And I know this might sound like another nonsense, but important question. Is money important to survive for everyone?
Well, let's first understand that both money and time are uniquely human constructs. They're human concepts, right?
Mhm.
Animals do not understand the concept of money, nor
Absolutely.
do they understand or abide by the concept of time. They honor circadian rhythm,
Right.
but they don't honor time, right?
Hmm.
So if they are a construct of the human imagination, then guess what? We can do anything we want with it. So we can define it as necessary for survival, or we can define it necessary for thriving. But it is in the modern world absolutely critical. In fact, in the ancient world, it's absolutely critical. There's a book you're probably familiar with, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yep.
And this is a book that was taken from scrolls in tablets during the time of Babylon. And you read it as if it is today. We've learned absolutely nothing.
I know. Yep.
So is it important? I would say so if it was written centuries ago and it keeps coming up. So again, does it, is money the root of all evil? No. Is a worship of money the root of all evil? Yeah. But is money able to complement being able to accomplish things that are important to you or serving others? Absolutely. So if you see that there's a relationship with it versus the worship of it, then what you can do is use it as a tool, just as you would in plumbing or anything else, to get the job done.
Great response, Chad. And it again, it sounds like a very simple question, but the truth is, from my experience as both a financial planner and a finance professor for many years, the average person doesn't understand that, and they'll spend money and disrespect money, and by just like what you said, money is, it's not the root of all evil. Actually, my theory is it's the people.
Money's awesome.
Yeah, money's awesome. There's nothing wrong with money. It's the problems with people. Something
Yeah.
wrong with, if you got a bad person with money, you're going to have bad outcomes. You got a good
Got it.
person with money, you're going to have good outcomes. So, yes, but this is your interview, so I just want to wrap it up. I got a few more questions. I don't want to take too much of your time. So, there's a lot of people out there who are struggling during the pandemic, great pandemic depression right now.
Yeah.
Any quick thoughts to them on how to
Yeah.
navigate the
If
economy?
we look at the sales on Amazon, if we look at the economy, we should have plummeted economically during the pandemic. We actually spent a crap load of money, and online shops thrived, right? It's the bricks and mortars that suffered. So what does that mean? It means that people were buying their mental satiation or happiness, right? They were buying their way out of depression. But that tarnishes very quickly. So instead, what I would say is buy experiences, not things. What does
Excellent.
that mean? Buy time going and doing things with others. Buy things that you can tell stories about for a lifetime versus a new phone. And let's just look at a phone. It boggles my mind that every 6 months to a year, it's like, here's the latest and greatest. And it's like, if you compared the features of those improvements on a smartphone to, say, a laptop, you're like, there's no way I'm going to spend that kind of money for a marginally better camera and a better processor. What I've got is sufficient. It's fine. It's going to last me forever. Or a car, right? Yet we need these things. Why? Because it's not about the phone. It's that it's a status symbol.
Right.
You're buying a status symbol. Ooh, look, the back of my phone is round versus, or 3 cameras versus 2. Ooh, you're a player, you're a baller. It's like, you know what? I'd rather be rich as a baller and retired and have a phone that's few years old than to be in debt and constantly staying up worrying how I'm going to pay that off and look cool. That's my personal preference. Not judging you. I'm saying that's how I roll, and I can tell you it's a whole lot better being retired and having money in the bank and being able to serve others than worrying about, can I make that credit card payment minimum?
Excellent. Thank you, Chad.
Yep.
Time versus money. Are they the same? What's the difference?
Well, they're relational, right? So if you want money, are you going to spend the time to have a relationship with it? Some people have a really bad relationship with money. Others have an extraordinary relationship with money. So money is simply a symbol. Money is just a tool. And the question is what's the outcome you want to create through that mechanism?
Mhm.
And are you going to spend enough time to manage how you're actually going to achieve that? So, what I do with my students is I just spent several weeks with them saying, define what your value is, and then define how you want to break that down. So if you want to be a life coach, for example, what do you think your value is? Think your value is $1,600 a session? Then how many clients do you need to make however much? If you want to make $120,000, what
Mhm.
do you have? And you want to say, I want 15 clients. Guess what? This is what your rate is. So I think you need to take the time to define how money is actually aligning to the value that you can offer other people. And if you're not aligned with it, people smell BS, and people will sniff you out and go, no, I'm not gonna buy. So you've got to figure out, what are you worth, and then spend the time to back that into, well, how many clients, how many products, whatever, and how many do I need to meet with in order to get there, in order for that money to work for you. Personally, I don't want to work 52 weeks out of the year. I want to take time off to go do some philanthropy and those kind of things. So guess what? My rate per client is higher, but I deliver and exceed the value of what I receive in return. Notice I never use the word charge. I don't charge my clients anything, because that means that I'm doing an expense. But if I see it that I'm creating an investment for them, what's the return on that investment? And I receive, in exchange for the value that I deliver, a certain amount of money. So my
Wow.
relationship and the language in it is very different than a lot of people.
That's a great way to look at it. It's not an expense. It's an investment for them.
Yeah,
So
and if you're not getting an investment, you
yeah,
fire your financial advisor, you fire your coach.
right. Okay, well, Chad. So great point. What is your favorite financial books? Top three, maybe.
Sure. Top three. Number one is the Bible. I will say I have never turned to it and not found an answer. Decoding it sometimes can be a challenge, but it is one of the most talked about concepts, and one of the biggest books in the world, and one of the best selling books in the world, right? So don't discount, oh, that's Christian, I'm not Christian, or that's a bunch of religious crap. The value of finance in there is amazing. Number two would be Ray Dalio, person most people have never heard of, called a book called Principles. Okay, look it up. It's fantastic. He is the most successful financial advisor in history, makes Warren Buffett look like a chump. Okay, and that's saying a lot. Number three would be pretty much anything by Napoleon Hill, because he is about the mindset, right? And you have to have a positive mindset with money in order for it to be a healthy tool for you.
That's a great answer. I never would have thought you would have said the Bible, but that's a different way to look at it. Very, very useful. Do you have any specific financial quotes that you think that you can remember off the top of your head that came out of there?
No, man, that's what search is for on the internet. That's right. That's the advantage
Just in
of
your memory.
technology, right? If I'm trying, I mean, that's a huge book. And so if I just type in some keywords, it's like, oh, okay, that's in Psalms. Oh, that's in Matthew, right? It'll go through and go, boom, here it is. Because it's too meaty for me to try to remember all the verses and passages. And I've read it multiple times and I still can't remember a lot of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer. I would have said the same thing. All
Yeah.
right, so just a couple more questions here, and it's got to do with your goals and where you're going with this. So, what would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so, and why?
Well, my goal right now, speaking of finance, is, as I said, we're about to be empty nesters. I have this amazing opportunity with a disruptive technology in the renewable energy space. And so my goal is to become a multi-billionaire
Billionaire.
with
Wow.
a B. Now,
I'm
get
rooting
your head
for you.
around the mindset that needs to happen with that. See, here's the thing with that, Tony, is once you become a multi-millionaire, it's just an extra comma, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the opportunity because it's such a disruptive technology, and it's such a huge growing industry worldwide. Everyone loves it, from government to companies to individual consumer, that the money is stupid. Okay, and so when you look at that and you align to, see, it's not enough to have a compelling motive, and second is to be obsessed about it, but number three is you must align. You must believe that it's actually possible. And so becoming a billionaire, I mean, my wife and I have talked, we're like, okay, we'll probably remodel the kitchen and literally, I mean, it's like, I don't have to work, and I'm not doing it because I want a bunch of material things. I want to do it because I like nice quality things, but because of the impact of what I can do with that money beyond
Mm.
myself.
That's a great point, Chad. I created this concept called the prosperity tipping point. in the Survival of the Richest, where basically a person has achieved all of the wealth that he need in this world. And at that certain point, anything that they get after that is basically money that could be used for other things, charities, giving, right? So if
So
you're going to
as
reach multi-billionaire status, you're probably already at your prosperity tipping point. But like, what would you do with that? I mean, obviously, like you said, you don't really need it. Do you have a lot of
yeah, it's real
cause?
simple. No, it's just really simple. Is so many people are striving for enlightenment, and it was very simple. Be the Buddha. Don't do what Buddha did. Is be the Buddha. If you want to be wealthy, be wealthy. Define what that means for you, right? So wealth to me is first and foremost mental wellness,
Hmm.
mental abundance. Then it comes into physical, and then it comes into financial, as you know, when you can look at that and keep slicing it into multiple pieces. But I have to be with a relationship to understand it doesn't define me, that it complements me,
Hmm.
and understand of what I can do with that money
Hmm.
and the impact that I can create with it. And so by doing that, by saying, okay, great, I've got billions of dollars. Question is what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to just use it for yourself? Or are you going to actually share it and teach others and actually create a positive impact with the world? Is the same as changing the conversation. I don't have to, and I won't have the conversation of whether climate change is real or whether it's fake news. To change the conversation and say, why do I need to prove or disprove it to simply be a good steward of the earth,
Right. Exactly.
right?
That's a great point.
So change the conversation that you're having with money and ask a better question. And when you do that, when I decided, okay, I'm ready to become a billionaire, you got to have some balls to do that? Not really. It's just a decision. I had to align with it was possible. And when I did that within 6 months, I had this company opportunity that said, hey, we need somebody to be at the helm of this. And by the way, it's worth billions. You attract it. And you've got, what is the book? The Secret, right? I mean, it just, there's so many repeats on the same message. You got to get your head in the game, and then the vehicles will present themselves. Simple example is if you ever wanted a car, suddenly you're like, oh man, I want that car. And then you look around and like there's a bazillion of them. It's not like everybody just went out and bought it, right? You start to focus on that and it appears. It was there the whole time. So it's just like tuning into that frequency. And so many people are just listening to white static thinking that that's music. And it's like, dude, you're not even on a frequency. If you hate country music, change it,
Yeah.
right? We forget that we control the dial. If you don't like the song, change the frequency. You don't like how much money you're making, change the frequency.
Absolutely right. And by the way, if you need any help with that multi-billion-dollar operation, you know my number.
You got it. Yes, I do.
All right, last question. What do you want to leave as your legacy?
What I want to leave as my legacy is what I put in my book, and that is that I could be of a character that my son would look at and perhaps choose for himself. Is that my behavior and my character is a model for others to consider. Uh, in terms of when I'm gone, I don't need a tombstone. I don't need this body anymore. Burn me, scatter me, discard me in the dumpster. I really don't care. The the legacy that I want is, did I make a difference? And I've already answered that, right? So when people come out with a book, when you come out with a book, people make the rules too hard to win. It's like, well, I got to be a New York Times bestseller. Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that. Wouldn't mind that at all, right? But they asked, how would you define success? I said, by impacting and changing one person's life for the positive. Then I know that it's worth it. Make the rules easy to win. And so I've already created that. I've already created that legacy. Now it's just gravy. Now it's just about creating more impact. But I already know if God is ready for me, man, it's been a good run. I'm not ready to go, but I know that I've created the impact that has made a difference.
Chad, do you have time for one more question?
No. Okay, fine. Yeah.
Okay. I just thought of it because we both have a lot to do with experience in third world cultures and
Developing worlds.
developing impoverished nations.
There we go.
We've both seen deep poverty. I mean, when I was 19, I went on a boat around the world, went to the poorest countries in the world, and was right in the face of everything. And you actually go out there every year and still do this stuff. So what can you tell me a little bit about the poverty that you've seen and the how that has affected your life?
Yeah, so let's be clear. The reason that I continue to do it is it keeps me humble. It keeps reminding me. It's a great example of, dude, reality check. You are blessed. You are lucky. You have an amazing life. Don't forget that, right? And it's not free. Freedom isn't free. I don't care what people say. There's a price for it, right? A price to preserve it, a price to grow it, a price to expand it. And so my goal is to expand it around the world. And by going to other parts of the world, the question I inevitably am asked by missionaries that go with me, teams that I take with me, is if they're the first time, they're like, Chad, these people seem like they're happier than us, but they have
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. And I said, they are.
that's funny.
Like, how is that possible when they're living in survival? I said, because they make the rules easy to win.
Mm.
They're happy if they get a meal today. You're complaining because you're not sure if it's GMO, organic, gluten free. And did you get enough of those 5 meals or 3 meals that you had? I said, you're making the rules too hard to win. I have to have the right car, the right color, the right year, right model, etc. I said, they're just glad to have a roof over their head. We were the second team in over a year and a half to go into Guatemala in March. We just came back from that trip in March of this year, the second team in the country to go in. And they were so grateful that we came in. And we built this house for a woman who was literally living in about an 8x6 bamboo and mud hut with tin sheeting on it and a dirt floor, no bed. Half of it was covered or was with her stove.
Wow.
She'd been living on that floor with her 2 children who had a terrible case of head lice, both of them, that we took care of. But she'd been living that way on the floor for years.
Wow.
We were able to build a house for her. And I said, look at how easy it is for her to win, how the rules are so much easier. If you want to have a happy life, whoever has the least amount of rules wins.
Wow, that is very wise information, wise lessons. Chad, and I agree with you actually. It's funny that it's not funny, but it's funny that we have the same experience. I said the same thing. I looked at a lot of these people and I said, why are they smiling all the time? Like, and I came back to America and I realized even the homeless people here are rich. They're super rich, homeless because
Oh, I've seen homeless people. It's like, so one of the things that if somebody really wants financial abundance and they want to make an impact,
yeah,
go to a fast food, go to McDonald's or wherever, and I
uh,
get $50 at a time. I get $5 gift cards. So $50 in $5 increments, and I leave it in my car. I give it to my son. I give some to my wife. And then when we're driving and we see somebody on the street, holding up a sign, it is really easy to go here. I don't have to worry about, are they going to mistreat that money, right, on alcohol or drugs or whatever. It's like, boom, here's a McDonald's gift card. It provides a meal for you.
mhm.
And I've had people who will be like, well, can you go over to this and get me an organic blah, blah. I'm like, no. Like, seriously, man, get a job.
Yeah,
And it's judging them. I don't mean to judge them. The point is you can create impact while giving people the opportunity to take responsibility for themselves at the same time.
absolutely. Great point, Chad. All right, we're going to start wrapping up. So I'm going to give you the floor for however long you need. It can
I
be
don't
a
have
moment.
anything else worth saying, man. I've said it all. That's
How
it.
about
I'm
your
expended.
how about your book? You got one book out there, right?
I do, and I've been too busy to get any more out there. I've been thinking about it, but if you want to understand how to master time, here's the thing: if you don't respect your time, nobody else will. And so, if you want to learn how to actually take control of your time and your life again, and create that success and financial abundance, then you should go out to Amazon or Audible or Barnes and Noble or where, it's everywhere, and pick it up. Chad E. Cooper. The name of the book is "Time Isn't the Problem."
You want to show us
And
the cover? Do you have a copy on here?
I don't have
No.
no.
Okay. Time
Okay.
is not the problem, right?
Time isn't the problem. Yeah. It'll teach you about foundational skills, stuff that your parents should have taught you, stuff that the public school system should have taught you, stuff that life should have taught you, and you weren't taught. These are the foundational keystones to your success. Without them, you're going to go survival, success. They are the stability or the meat between the sandwich. And the things that you think are the solutions aren't.
Okay. And where can they get more information about you? What is your website address, et cetera?
ChadECooper.com. E is an echo, ChadECooper.com, or you can go to unmaskyourlegendarylife.com. You can figure out how to spell that.
Well, thank you, Chad. Any other last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to share my message and hopefully inspire some people, not just to stay inspired, but to actually create some transformation. Just like a old what is it? It's an old proverb of a marathon starts with the first step. An old African proverb. Walk as far as you can see, and when you get there, you'll be able to see further. So go easy on yourself. Be gentle, have some compassion, and just cast one pebble at a time, and before you know it, you're going to have a mountain.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chad. We're going to wrap it up now. So thank you, everyone. You've been watching or listening and watching Dr. Finance Live podcast. Again, this is Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also Dr. Finance. We're here with Chad Cooper. Please check out his book and also his website, and any information he has on there is available. We're looking forward to seeing you again on the next episode. For more information about this podcast, you can go to my website, drfinance.info. That's drfinance.info. And thank you again, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks.